wanted to talk to everybody about the Graviflyer today. There's been some interest in it on exactly what's going on and the effect of it. And since I've been doing the one wire energy, I found out what it was. So I was reading a report, and I don't know if it was meant for me or not, but I read it anyway. And it talked about weight reduction in a craft and how to achieve it. Let me say this. It said 80% weight reduction. And I think it has to do with the way it's connected. And let me explain a little bit. You see, when you put in the one wire energy into something, you can force it in, and then, or it'll trickle in, I should say. Then you put a ground to it and it pulls it through. You see, it's negative energy, so it has to be pulled through a system. So when I put the rod down the center of my Tesla coil, just understand this for what it is. You put it down there, it's not attached to anything. It goes through there because it radiates, but it takes a ground wire to pull it through. So that ground wire is acting like a suction to a straw. So as soon as you suck on the straw, the energy pulls out faster and goes through. So what does that do to the center plate on your Graviflyer? Well, instead of it taking 6 hours to saturate that plate, and remember this as well, it's not just the plate you're saturating. You have to saturate the rods as well. And then any kind of metal that you put into the top and bottom for bracing in order to hold it in. So you need the fastest saturation that you could possibly get. So by connecting it directly to the ground, it's pulling it faster through it or sucking it faster through it like a straw in order to get the saturation rate time down. That's what it's doing right there. So that's the reason that you're putting it in there like that. It's pulling the saturation level in there to be much, much faster. Now, let me say about the disc, because there's a lot of I don't understand about the disc. Alexa used 16 volts at 0.75 amps. So what does that give you? It doesn't give you exactly static electricity. It gives you very low voltage or high voltage, but low. And I don't know the best way to say that. It's just there's not much there. You can touch it and probably not have a problem touching it. But what it does, it has heat into it. So when we're talking about a grounding effect on the one wire energy, you're looking for a little bit of heat in the ground in order to suck that to that straw, right? Well, that's why he runs so little energy on those two plates. You see, it's a draw. That's all it is. He doesn't want it to spark over because all he wants is enough draw in order to pull that plate, that energy on that plate and everywhere around it out. He's looking to expand it. So when he runs that little bit of power, that's all he needs. So you see, when you put too much power into that, it'll change your system from a cold energy in the center to a hot energy. So you're going to destroy the entire effect if you don't go really far down in the amount of voltage and amps you put into that DC flyback. So with that said, you understand the draw now. It's a simple pull. It's pulling it through the system. It's like a straw. You're sucking it in. But again, you don't want too much. And we're talking by the time he gets to the entire thing and puts it on full power, he's only got going into it 16 volts and 0.75 of an amp into that ZVS. That means that his frequency is going to be really high. He's still going to have amps in there, but not a lot. And he'll get a very small heat signature from it. Not enough to flip the cold energy back to hot. As soon as you do that, you lose. So what does that mean? That means that the plate itself, where that wires come in and it's getting on that rotating plate, that right there cannot spark over. That's one of the fundamental things you have to worry about, is it cannot spark over. Why? Because it tells you just took that cold energy and you replaced it with hot energy and you failed. Automatic fail. Now, remember, it's a jaw, so he turns it on twice. He brings it up and brings it up again. So what is he doing? He's trying to take that center plate that's cold electricity and he's pulling it up to the plate or pulling it down to the other one. He's stretching that field a little more. Now, let me tell you something about this cold energy you probably don't know. It's a radiant energy that has a massive amount of energy in it. And I know this is going to sound silly, but when you put this thing into something like, say, a grape or an orange or something like that, it changes the energy to produce more. And it'll radiate even further. Now, it could be a citrus effect. It could be the water content in it. It could just be the way it's built. I only mention that because the amount of energy is in there is super high. But when you start pulling the energy through it, you're adding more energy to it. So if you're just putting the one wire to it and you're getting 80%, where's your extra 20 coming from? Well, see, Alexei knew this. He had the top and bottom plate pull it so that he can get a bigger field around it. When you have a bigger field, what do? You get more energy. You see, it's that simple. You follow his rules and you get it right. Now you're going to be able to get your 100%. It's not a lifting force, though. That's the whole thing. It is simply canceling gravity. It will sit there on the ground and you won't know if it's done or not. You see, in order to get it to jump and go anywhere, we all know it's the piezo buzzer that's in there that makes it jump. Now, this is something that you're just going to have to understand about it, and I showed it on the channel exactly how to amplify it. You have to amplify both sides. You see, there's a Tesla ring on one side when you get close to it, and then on the other side. But in between that is an area that'll amplify both sides. There's only one, and it's specific to what you're running. So you have to have everything up and running before you start running the test on there to find out exactly where it is. Please remember, if he's using a Slayer exciter circuit, everything in this craft is self-correcting. And that also means that it's on a beat rate. So everything that is going to be in this is based on that. It's not based on the frequency, not anything like it. It's based on the amount of energy that he gets. What's the highest amount of negative energy he can put into the craft? That's it. Not a frequency thing. You can put all this stuff in there at a certain frequency and then it'll come out in the megahertz. Why? Because it's the massive amount of energy that he puts in there. So that's why he makes everything self-correcting. That's why I use the Slayer exciter circuit, and it's a very low voltage. The lower the voltage, the better. Anything around 12 to 14 volts going in is perfect. You don't need any more than that. You see, it's one of the misnomers of this as well. I built Tesla coils that can shoot energy out everywhere. But it wasn't until you run at the really low amount of energy in the negative energy that you find this. You have to run it real low. 10, 12 volts somewhere, 14 volts max. Don't go any higher. That's kind of another thing that people overdo. We overdo Tesla coil, we overdo the flyback. Both of them are low energy because it's negative energy. The energy works different. Now, let me explain the rod down the center and what you're doing. The rod down the center is simply a Casimir effect. That's it. So you have this coil on the outside. You take this rod through the center. And what is it doing? It's pushing your field in. So it's taking your dielectric field out here, and it's taking your magnetic field here, and it'll take your dielectric and shove it inside your magnetic field. It reverses the process of hot energy to negative energy. Negative energy is simply the dielectric field inside of your magnetic field. That's what negative energy is. You can call it cold. You can call it anything you want. It's basically, when you say cold, it's room temperature and below. When you can drop the amount of heat in the system, not the heat around it, but the amount in the system, it'll go down and become superconductive if you can get it down far enough. It's a trick to do. We can do it in coils. In this amount of metal, it's a little harder. But if you're pulling the Casimir effect like that in the Tesla coil with the rod down the center, when you get to the plates in the center plate, you say, well, Casimir effect is 2 plates, right? Okay, I can understand that with energy on them. But what happens when you put a center plate in? Well, now you get to the point of saturation. You see, why is that important? Well, now you're saturating it not only with the cold energy coming in, you're now saturating it in between those 2 plates in the center plate. Now you're forcing a second Casimir effect to go on. You now put a multiplier into the system. Now you're able to push it even further. You see, that's this other effect that gives him the more energy. He needed just a little bit more, and that's what did it for him. Now, you can run the test yourself and see it. I have. I know exactly what it is. And the distances that he gives you. How do I want to say this? It works better when you put them even closer than what he said. But it doesn't give you lift. You see, that field has to build out to the measurement that he gave you. So when he says 1 inch off the top plate and he says 1.5 inches off the bottom plate, that's exactly what he means. Why? Because he wants that draw of that energy to pull it even further. He knows the amount of energy he needs for the system. So you go, oh, well, that makes a big difference, doesn't it? So if I put him even closer, I get the effect right away, but that's not what I need. You see, I got to put him out a little further until I get the effect the way he wanted us to get it. That distance is important so that you can get the field to build out even bigger. Now, let me say this next part with the lifting factor, and I touched on it just briefly, but I'm going to do it again. We know the lifting factor alone is in the piezoelectric disc. We know this 100% because it's the amplifying factor. Now, let me explain. I put a bend in the end of my center plate for one reason. I needed to isolate the negative on the bottom from the positive on the top. We needed to create a dipole. I need that top to create a dipole in order to shoot it up. Therefore, anytime it's in the air, I need a negative at all times to be on the bottom. I need it to be a floating negative. Therefore, I move the plate and I put it down like this so that it stays negative. The top stays positive. Now, that gives me the top and bottom. It gives me a north and south. I need that top to stay positive. You see, when you put this energy in there the first time and you put your electrostatic meter to it, what's going to happen? It'll go and fluctuate back and forth, back and forth. We rarely get a reading that's 100% on one side versus the other. That bend at the end creates that. It allows it to stay negative on the bottom while staying positive on the top. So what is the piezo doing? It's taking that plate, that little disc that's rotating, and it's going to change it. So it's positive. We're getting positive here. It's going to push it to a negative. And that sounds wrong, but it's 100% right. In order to pull that thing up, you cannot have a positive on a positive. You must have a negative to a positive so that that positive attracts towards a negative and goes up. I don't know that that makes a lot of sense to people, but that's exactly how it works. So every time I've ever told you about a lifter not being ion wind, that's the effect. You see, it's got to flip that pole. And once it flips the pole, then it'll attract to it. As soon as we turn off the piezoelectric buzzer, it goes back to being positive. You see, when you separate the effects between lift and anti-gravity, you start to understand this. Why does he have it hovering? Why is it only lifting? It only lifts when the piezoelectric buzzer is pushed. So, therefore, you must have a true north and south on it in order to create the right dipoles. He must then have an effect where he can change that top plate to a negative in order to attract that positive to make it go in one direction. There is no piezo disc on the bottom. There is no way to pull it that way. So this is the understanding of how he lifts it versus how it hovers. Now, we can verify that his invention is correct. And if you understand John Hutchison, you understand the effect he's looking for. It's not going to change in how he does it. Up and to the left, up and to the left. It moves the same speed, same direction. What is Hutchison doing? He's saturating, when he puts an aluminum plate there, he's saturating the aluminum plate. Once he has it saturated, he has a, crystal capacitor that he built, or a crystal battery, whichever you want to call it. And that's his lift. You see, you get the same effects. They're exactly the same lift, same effects, run in a slightly different way. You say, well, there's a Tesla coil at the top and there's a Tesla coil at the bottom. What is he doing? He's creating a heat draw. That's what he did. He created a heat draw. All Alexei did was took it and simplified it into a form that you could actually start to understand a little better, because all the effects he didn't need, he removed. All the effects that he needed, he kept. It's that simple. They're the same effect, guys. It's not any different. Alexei's doing the same thing Hutchison's doing. He's got the exact same effect. A lot of people misunderstand this because they don't understand negative electricity and they don't work with it. They would let other people do the test and they watch them. Well, that works for a little while, but when you want to build something like this, do this dumb test that I do. And I say them the craziest things in the world. You take mud, you make it conductive. Take water and make it conductive. Take an orange and make it conductive. Take your lunch burrito and make it conductive. You'll start to understand why. When you do those things, you understand the amount of energy going into the craft. Now you can understand how much negative energy is in there and how far it'll go, how many things it gets to, where it interconnects with something else. Can you start another Tesla coil with negative energy through burritos? It sounds dumb. I understand that. But what is it showing you? It's showing you that the energy itself, when you put a draw on it that has a little bit of heat, it's able to pull it right to the system. So how does that directly connect to our Graviflyer? Well, when you have those heat plates on the top and bottom, you're creating a little bit of heat, aren't you? Now you're able to expand that field. Now, you say, well, why don't I just saturate the whole thing right away? Well, why don't I just go and try to blow it out? Well, every time you do, when you don't understand the mechanism of saturation in it, you're just going to put it back into hot energy. When you try to overpower it, that's what you do. You say, well, I can use a bigger rod in my Tesla coil. Well, you went back to hot energy. You didn't learn your lesson. Start over. You go, well, I can turn it up a whole lot. Well, now you went back into hot energy again. You didn't learn your lesson. Start over. You want to do this, do it right. A 4-inch Tesla coil with 32 gauge wiring at 12 inches long, wired, running around 300 kilohertz will get you there on a Slayer exciter circuit. Now, one thing you have to look at what Alexei was trying to do later on is he made almost a 3-foot Tesla coil with a 4-inch diameter. And that was one of his last lift videos. When you do something like that, you are reducing the frequency. You're not raising it. You're reducing it. So when he went from a little 12-inch long Tesla coil, which was probably about 2.5 inches in diameter, I'm not sure the wire size he used, probably 32 gauge to 28 gauge in there. It basically means he was running somewhere 700, 800 kilohertz in there, and he was getting too high of a frequency. So he made the Tesla coil bigger in order to lower the frequency. There's got to be a reason for it. So let me explain it like this. If you put in 1,000,000 volts, where does your frequency have to be? I don't know. Way higher? You have to basically run microwaves out of it in order to be able to do it. Lexi was going lower. Therefore, he understood what it was. Negative electricity runs on a lower frequency, and it gives you more energy. It is sounding really weird, isn't it? The amount of energy that goes into your Tesla coil has to be lower. The amount of high voltage going in for your flyback has to be lower. But he's getting more energy out. Your frequency has to be lower. Everything on it is completely opposite of the way we think of energy. We think of energy, the more we put in, the more we get out. Well, no, the more you waste. You see, a lot of this stuff, if you start putting sparks off your Tesla coil, you've already wasted energy. You start to get plasma out of something that is not like a gel-like plasma, you're wasting energy. As soon as you start breaking light out, you're wasting energy. This whole system is based on containment of energy, not wasting it. So when you go through the Graviflyer setup and you want to get everything right, remember that. You see, he did balance the system. And because it's self-correcting, and he's only looking for saturation in this stuff, not frequency, then it becomes real easy to understand. How fast can I get it saturated? Once I do I have the correct distances between my piezo and everything else to get to flip the field? All negative on the bottom, all positive on the top until you go and hit that button. Then the top disc becomes negative, forces the middle disc to push up to meet that negative, and there's your lift. It's as simple as that. The saturation is the hardest part because we never look for it the right way. We always look to overpower it, change the material, do something else. You could simply say you're adding a ton of electrons into it by saturation. That's it. Free electrons. You're getting a bunch of them. If you see it in electrons, I always see things in fields because I build. But I'm sure physicists looked at it like they're free electrons, and that's what you're creating over there, and that's why it gives it the effect that you're looking for. Sure, that's fine. I can live with that. But it's a simple mechanical process of what he's doing. He's not looking for frequency as much as he's looking for the point of saturation. And if lower frequency gets him that point of saturation faster, guess what? He's using it. That's it. That's as simple as it gets, guys. It's not got to be complicated more than that. You need to correctly understand the negative energy. I know there's a lot of people out there that get upset when I say negative energy because it's not in physics. Well, I'm sorry, but physics has to expand and put it in there because anti-gravity comes when you have negative energy. And I've shown you how to make it. I've shown you a lot on how to make it on this channel. So if you follow the steps that I gave you on how to build stuff and do it, you have it. You just have to remember the points of saturation. The hardest thing to understand, easiest thing to do once you get to understand it, and you're going to be able to create what you want. Anyway, that's what the process is going on, guys. So for that paper that I saw, I appreciate it. I don't know if it was meant for me, but I did look at it, and that's my opinion on it, and that's what I've seen that goes on. By the way, you'll show it in some of the tests that I did. When I start bringing up the amount of energy from the Tesla coil, you'll see the top disc spark over, and you see me wasting the energy. Well, I failed. So please understand this when I tell you this. It's from the experiences and testing that I've done that I understood it. And that my Tesla coil in testing went down quite a bit in frequency in order to make that energy work. So the testing's out there, guys. It's already on the channel, and you can sit there and watch it. Just don't overpower it because it won't work for you. Anyway, with that said, guys, I hope this explains a little bit more of the Graviflyer. That Casimir effect's more important than you think it is, and it happens more than once. And because it does, it's a multiplier. So Have a great day. Thank you. Before we get out of here, I just want to let you guys know that I offer memberships on my channel now. It's a really cool thing. I do behind the scenes stuff. I give you more information. I also put things out early on it. All of my Fringe Think Tank Star Trek episodes will be on there. I just put out another one, a number 7 episode. Also, you're going to get emojis on there that you can use in the live chats. They're pretty cool. And as we grow our membership, I'll be able to put more emojis out there. Just a fun way to liven up the chat a little bit. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment, and have yourself a great day. Thank you very much.